Being a coder of global conflicts isn't just about participating in pivotal events of history. It signifies entering a new era for all of humanity. The First World War showcased the dominance of machinery and weapons of mass destruction on the battlefield. The Second World War further solidified these advancements, introducing new tanks, aircraft, and, of course, nuclear weapons. In 1945, Americans first tested and utilized the atomic bombs. Within a few years, the Soviet Union became the second nuclear power. The irony lies in the fact that the creators of atomic bombs advocated for the abolishment of such weaponry, recognizing the dangers of an arms race. The significance of these events is underscored by scholars and intellectuals who gathered around the journal Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. In 1947, the journal initiated the Doomsday Clock project, symbolizing the impending apocalypse. A commission, comprised of distinguished scientists and Nobel laureates, managed the movement of the clock's hands, reflecting the level of threat. A crucial part of the journal's history was its founder, Russian-American biochemist Eugene Rabinovich, appealing to the American government not to use atomic bombs against Japanese cities. After the war, he organized conferences of scientists on global security issues. Today, the journal is led by John Mecklin, a journalist, political scientist, and consultant who focuses attention on the risks associated with global corruption and corporate lobbying. The journal's board includes leading minds and Nobel laureates. Their wisdom and experience guide the journal forward in the struggle for global security and against the arms race. Thus, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists remains an important forum for discussing issues related to security and the future of humanity. There is a widely held belief that the presence of nuclear arsenals in the two leading powers significantly reduces the risk of catastrophic consequences. This factor prevented the outbreak of a Third World War immediately after the end of the Second. Until 2018, the closest position of the Doomsday Clock was set in 1953, when the USA and the Soviet Union conducted their nuclear tests, and the clock stopped at 11:58. This happened in parallel with the secret military plans of both sides in case of mutual destruction. However, history is full of unexpected turns. For example, in the late 1950s, Kodak discovered that their photographic film was deteriorating in certain areas of the USA. An investigation revealed that this was related to the government's secret nuclear tests. This incident led to the exposure of atomic tests and prompted serious research into radiation. As a result, by 2017, the U.S. Department of Health estimated the number of excess cancer deaths related to nuclear tests to be 49,000. Interestingly, most of the victims were ordinary citizens who happened to be in the radioactive contamination zone. Today in Australia, a group of descendants of nuclear test victims has begun legal proceedings against the government for recognition of damage. They also advocate for joining the international treaty banning nuclear tests. That's why it is believed that the realization by the US and the USSR of the danger of using and conducting nuclear tests in the 1960s, as well as the signing of the relevant treaty in 1963, were important factors influencing the movement of the Doomsday Clock. However, the process of moving the clock's hands is not always explained purely by moral or political motives. For example, during the Vietnam War, the Doomsday Clock moved a few minutes closer to midnight again. After the ratification of various international agreements on nuclear non-proliferation and the restriction of strategic weapons following the ban on nuclear tests, the clock's hand moved backward again. Such changes were primarily driven by economic interests of the parties. Further developments confirm that the movement of the Doomsday Clock responds not only to political actions, but also to economic factors. Of course, after the signing of agreements on nuclear non-proliferation and the restriction of strategic weapons, the world gained more stability and security. However, in the conditions of military conflicts, such as the wars in Afghanistan and South Africa, the Doomsday Clock starts moving in the opposite direction again. Thus, observations of the movement of the Doomsday Clock show that global politics and security are closely linked to nuclear weapons issues. It is important to remember that the history and present of our planet depend on the ability of states to find peaceful and secure solutions to nuclear security issues. In 1984, the clock literally turned back time, showing 11:57. It was a signal that something global was happening. The whole world witnessed historic events as the clock's hand moved only backward. One of the biggest deviations occurred in the 1990s, the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Velvet Revolutions in Eastern Europe, and the end of the Cold War. At that time, the clock moved to its largest mark, retreating 17 minutes from midnight, which is still a record. Interestingly, even the collapse of the USSR did not affect its course, but this was despite the concerns of the USA and NATO, fearing that Soviet nuclear weapons could fall into the wrong hands. In 1995, the clock's hand moved forward again due to the leakage of mines from the CIS countries. This potential risk of nuclear programs in other countries worried many. Now, many believe that the Doomsday Clock has lost its relevance. Like many other inventions of the Cold War era, they have become useless and are only used to maintain their brand. Since 2007, global warming has consistently been on the list of issues discussed in the global community. While in the 1970s, this problem didn't attract as much attention as global cooling did back then, it is now becoming increasingly relevant. Warming plays a negative role in the spread of nuclear contamination, particularly through the melting of glaciers where nuclear testing was conducted. The concept of the Doomsday Clock, installed in Union Square, New York, raises doubts for many. It's unlikely they can authoritatively reflect the state of the world as their predecessors, the atomic clocks, did. The history of the Doomsday Clock goes hand in hand with the era that created them. Meanwhile, the pace of change in the world is only accelerating. For example, scientific research warns of a possible global catastrophe due to climate change. Scientists are increasingly sounding the alarm, emphasizing the importance of taking action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and preserve natural resources. However, despite the seriousness of the situation, many continue to ignore warnings. This could lead to negative consequences not only for the environment but for all of humanity. Time is ticking, and the question of preserving our world becomes increasingly urgent. Thus, issues of global warming and nuclear safety remain relevant and require serious attention from the global community. It's time to act to ensure a safe future for all. Thank you, dear friends, for joining me on this fascinating journey through history. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new videos about exciting events and facts from the past. Also, leave your comments below this video. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and requests for topics for future videos. See you all again on the channel.